The 260 journey is a chapter by chapter journey through all 260 chapters of the New Testament. Today we're looking at 2 Corinthians 6, and Paul introduces us to a very important word. It's the word yoke. Listen to what Paul warns us about in verses 14 through 16. Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? Or what harmony is there between Christ and Belial? Or what does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? What agreement is there between the temple of God and idols? For we are the temple of the living God. This principle was familiar in the agricultural and farm culture of the Bible. Listen to what the Old Testament said about it. Deuteronomy 22:10, you shall not plow with an ox and a donkey yoked together. See, a yoke was a crossbar with two U-shaped pieces that encircled the necks of a pair of oxen or mules or other animals that would force them to work together as a team. What is important was that the two of the same animals in size and species, like oxen and donkeys, were put into it. You could not yoke two different animals like an ox and a donkey because they were not like-minded and they had different strengths. You would want to yoke together the same animal with the same strength, the same focus to go forward as one. Now, Paul switches to different things inside the yoke, not animals, but believers and unbelievers. And this is important for a successful future for all of us. Another way to define a yoke, I think it means to be stuck together for the journey with somebody. You're in a relationship through a device that says you can't go where you want to go any longer. Paul warns against being yoked with an unbeliever, someone who has not made Jesus Christ Lord of their life. What kind of relationship could Paul be referring to? I believe this is true in dating. It could be a marriage. It means to be yoked together has the idea of a long-term relationship that can't be easily exited out of. It could be in business transaction, marriage investment, partnerships. And Paul is warning us that to be unequally yoked with someone who does not let the word of God have the final say in their life is a train wreck waiting to happen. You can't put them both in the same yoke. See, Paul asks 4 questions to the argument. What do they have in common? What harmony can there be? Is there any agreement between them? What kind of fellowship would be there? These are 4 key words of being yoked together. Let's be practical for a moment. Remember, we're dealing with believers in Jesus and unbelievers getting stuck in a long-term relationship that cannot be terminated easily. In a dating relationship, the believer wants to wait to have sex in the context of marriage, while the unbeliever doesn't see a reason to wait. In a business deal, the believer may have ethical standards based on doing things with honesty and integrity, whereas the unbeliever sees the bottom line as the reason for doing something, regardless of what you have to do to make money. What about in a marriage? How does a believer and an unbeliever raise their children? There becomes a conflict of values. Paul is in no way saying that you don't have contact with people who don't believe in Jesus. He is speaking about a yoke, a relationship that you're stuck together, going somewhere together, but you have 2 different types of species in the yoke. One says Jesus is Lord. The other says I'm in charge of me. We live with people who don't believe in the resurrected Jesus. We go to school with them. We see them at our children's events, see them at football games. Those are not yokes. Having lunch, getting ice cream, doing dinner with a couple that are not Christians, that's not a yoke. Let me say this in conclusion. When I do things with unbelievers, I'm not thinking of fellowship. I'm thinking of ministry. I'm thinking I want them to know about the greatest person in the universe who loves them so much. It may take some time to introduce them to Jesus, but when the focus is ministry and not fellowship, then I look for opportunities to share about Jesus. It's about distinguishing between fellowship and ministry. J.C. Ryle said it like this: the highest form of selfishness is a man content to go to heaven alone. My job with unbelievers is not to be yoked with unbelievers, but I want to find a way to get them ready for heaven. Let's take a bunch of people with us to heaven today. Thanks for joining the 260 Journey.